participants. Welcome to the event, the Global CEQ Tools Dissemination, Advancing Equity Through Fiscal Policy Analysis. It is my honor for being here with diverse and distinguished groups of individuals gathered today to delve into the critical discourse surrounding fiscal policies and their impact on global equity. As we embark on this journey, let us reflect on the backdrop that propels our discussion. We cannot ignore the stark reality that inequality has significantly increased over years. Economic growth, while bringing about positive transformation, has not been uniform, leaving a widening gap between the privileged and the marginalized. In Asia and Africa, despite pockets of economic growth and poverty reduction, persistent challenges have led to uneven progress in narrowing the wealth gap. Latin America has experienced fluctuation, with some countries successfully implementing social policies to mitigate inequality, while others grapple with economic disparities. In most of European countries, the trend has been characterized by an increase of economic disparities and the struggle in evolving social welfare system. Success in fiscal redistribution, as we know, is linked to redistributed effort and to targeted allocation of resources. By estimating the CEQ tools, we will know where we are in terms of inequality, whether specific policies contribute to greater inequality or help reduce it. However, it is essential to acknowledge the unique challenges in developing CEQ tools. Data limitation, capacity development, resource constraint, policy complexity, and political will pose significant hurdles. Addressing these challenges requires a collaborative effort involving governments, institutional organizations, academia, and civil society. By organizing this global dissemination, we aim to recognize our common challenges and build the necessary networks to address them collectively. As Oxfam, our objectives are clear: facilitated knowledge exchange, promote cross-country learning, enable informed policy evaluation and implementation, align with the global goals and commitment, foster global accountability, and cultivate international partnership. We aspire for tangible outcomes, including raising awareness among civil society organizations about the UN mandate for SDGs 10.4.2, informing CSOs about the impact of the SDGs 10.4.2 indicator on fiscal reforms, and ensuring that government hears CSOs' feedback on the critical matters. I'm pleased to acknowledge the presence of representatives from esteemed organizations, including the CEQ Institute, Fact-Finders, Oxfam International, Oxfam countries, GIZ, UNDP, the World Bank, invited CSOs focusing on fiscal, tax, and poverty, as well as think tanks and university-based research institutions, and of course, our valuable government representatives. The global context amplifies their significance, allowing for cross-country comparison that enhance the effectiveness of policies through shared best practices and lesson learned. In closing, as we embark on this collective exploration on advancing equity through fiscal policy analysis, let us keep in mind the transformative power of collaboration and shared knowledge. May our discussion today contribute to shaping a future where fiscal policies truly serve the welfare of all citizens, fostering a world of inclusivity and prosperity. Thank you, and let the discussion begin.
Thank you, Nigma. So this webinar is intended for fiscal justice advocates from around the world, and I welcome you all. It covers both tax policy and social spending policy. And it is recorded and live streamed on YouTube. It will be available for reviewing afterwards. So feel free to share with your colleagues as relevant afterwards. Let me introduce you to our speakers. We have Sailesh Tiwari, lead economist at the World Bank. We have Setio Budiantoro of the Indonesian Ministry of National Development and Planning. We have Aha Maftuchan, Director of the Prakarsa. We have Binish Amjad, Associate Director of the CQ Institute. And Richmond Atta Ankoma, Research Fellow at the Institute of Statistical, Social, and Economic Research. And we have two of my Oxfam colleagues, Media Askar, Fiscal Justice Program Manager at Oxfam in Indonesia, and Angela Alu, Fiscal Policy Advisor at Oxfam in Ghana. Thank you all for accepting to speaking with us today. Our agenda is as follows. I will give a presentation to introduce the topic. It will last for about half an hour. And then we'll have two panels of half an hour each. A first one will be a conversation on the technical challenges and the policy analysis opportunities raised by the redistributive impact of fiscal policy indicator. And the second will be a conversation about the political challenges of that indicator. So you can ask questions through the Q&A functionality of Zoom. So that's the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to ask questions at any time, but we will answer them at the end of the session. With that, I will start my presentation just to introduce the topic, to put everybody on the same page. Instead of a PowerPoint presentation, I am going to share my screen, here, share, and I am going to serve the web. So you are going to serve the web with me. And we'll first go to this website. You have all heard about the Sustainable Development Goals, I assume. You know that there are 17 of them. So this is the sdgs.un.org website. I'm going to share all the web addresses that I'm surfing at the end of this webinar so that you can come back to them after. So you all know that there are 17 SDGs. And I'm scrolling down now to SDG 10. And this is reduce inequality within and among countries. Now, you probably know that each SDG has a number of targets, which are more specific objectives. And I click here on targets indicators. I scroll down to this target 10.4, which is adopt policies, especially fiscal, wage, and social protection policies, and progressively achieve greater equality. And under that, there are indicators, which are actual measurements that allow to track progress against the indicators. And here we have indicator 10.4.2, the redistributive impact of fiscal policy. This is the subject of our discussion today. It's one of the many indicators that are part of the SDGs framework. In 2019, Oxfam collaborated with the CQ Institute at Tulane University and the World Bank to propose this indicator, and the United Nations formally adopted it in 2020. It is significant because previous indicators for Goal 10 did not really measure economic inequality within countries. It is the first time that governments have a formal mandate from the United Nations to measure inequality. And as we shall see, this indicator does much more than that. I am now going to shift to a second website. This is the unstats.un.org/ndg. So this is from the UN Statistical Divisions. And you see they have SDGs indicators. I select global database. Here I select again data, global database. We are on the data portal of the United Nations. Is data portal for SDGs. And here I type 10.4.2. I select. And here we go. I'm going to, if you just click here, you can get the result. It does take a few minutes to load, so I've done it afterward, before this webinar. And this is what you get, Excel spreadsheet with the SDG 10.4.2 indicator data. What you see here are Gini coefficients. So that's the most common measure of inequality. It ranges between 0 and 100. 0 is the perfect equality, means that everybody has the same income. 100 is the maximum inequality, means that one person has all the income and everybody has nothing. So you see here, for instance, Albania, a Gini of 34, which is about average, I would say. Now, you can see, so here Albania, there are 3 data points. Those are 3 Gini coefficients for 3 different income concepts. And I'm going to come back to that in a second. You can also see that there are data for many countries, but not all countries. And that for most countries, we have data for only 1 year, like it is the case for Albania here. So that's a problem, because to measure progress, you of course need several years of data. And this is part of the reason why we are organizing this webinar for you fiscal justice advocates. We'd like your help to help fill in this, this chart. We want data for more countries and for more years. Now I'm going to switch to yet another website. And this is the website of the CEQ Institute at Tulane University. That's commitmenttoequity.org. And I have to say, this is really a model for all universities, all research centers. You can find everything on this website. Here I'm in the data center. You can see here you have a data visualization tool. I cannot say that properly. Visualization. Okay. You have the CQ metadata. That's basically you can follow there all data to the source and methodology for each individual country. If you are an academic, you can go in here to go all the way to the microdata that is used. And you can also even get the coding to compute the indicator. And you have an in-depth explanation of the methodology. And one thing you can get is a bit more complete version of this slide. It is a bit of simplified version. And this is what we're really talking about. This slide explains the methodology of CEQ. It consists of measuring income inequality at different stages of government interventions. So you start with the market income. That's the inequality of income from private sources. Then you subtract direct taxes like the personal income tax, and you add direct transfers like pensions or social assistance transfers and employment benefits and so on. And then you get disposable income. That's the income that is in your pocket for you to spend. Then you subtract indirect taxes like the value added tax or sales tax, and you add indirect subsidies like food or fuel subsidies, and you get consumable income. Consumable income is the real value of what you have to spend. And after that, you can still add in-kind subsidies to obtain final income. In-kind subsidies are the actual costs of health and education services provided by the government that is attributed to individual households. So for instance, if in your family you have 2 children who are in elementary school, this methodology would assume that the government gives you money that corresponds to the actual costs of 2 elementary school students, and then you repay that money to the government to actually buy the education of your children. So it's a kind of a fictitious income, in-kind income. So on the UN database, the spreadsheet that I showed you earlier, there were 3 data points, and those are the ones that are highlighted in green here. So it's the Gini coefficient of market income, Gini coefficient of disposable income, Gini coefficient of consumable income. And on the CEQ website, you can find all the other pieces of data on this chart. In fact, you can find even more detail. So with that, we can basically compute the indicators that you saw on the database. I have to mention that the data sources are primarily 2. There are household surveys and administrative data from line ministries. So a lot of countries carry out household surveys only occasionally. And that is a big reason why we have only 1 data point for many countries. Household surveys are pretty expensive to carry out, and poor countries, they only do it maybe once a decade or once every 5 years, something like that. The administrative data should always be available. That said, the government must be willing to share them with researchers, or the government must be willing to do the analysis itself, which is not always a given. But so if we have that data, then researchers can compute these different concepts of income, compute the indicators, and then you can compare the indicators over time or across countries. And here is a comparison across countries for developing countries. And this compares the market income Gini with the consumable income Gini. And you can see that for most countries, there's very little difference. So the 2 crosses, the blue cross and the red cross, are almost at the same spot. So that means that there is very little redistribution. The inequality doesn't change very much before and after government fiscal transfers. That's especially true on the left of the chart, where there's virtually no difference. If you move to the right of the chart, you see like Argentina, South Africa, there is some difference. So there is some redistribution, but it's not dramatic. This contrasts with this next slide, which is the same idea, but for OECD countries. And here compares market income with disposable income. And here you see that there is dramatic redistribution by the state. If you take, for instance, Ireland, so IRL on the right-hand side, that's the country that has the highest market income inequality. So the private sector generates the most inequality in Ireland. However, the disposable income inequality goes all the way down. It's 20 percentage points lower. So the Gini for market income is 50, Gini for disposable income is 30. There's a 20-point difference. And in fact, even though the market generates the most inequality in Ireland, after government intervention, inequality in Ireland is about average compared to other OECD countries. So this is the power of this tool to really measure the degree to which governments redistribute income. And you can compare that across countries, and provided that you have enough data points, you can also compare that through time. But you can do even more than that. And so here I'm going to go to yet another website. Wait a minute, because here oops, 1 second, please. And the Zoom Zoom bar doesn't allow me to reach to the please bear with me. Here, it's not this one. Okay. 1 second. Here I have the website that I was looking for. Is this one? So this is a website built by the World Bank, dataanalytics.worldbank.org/Romania-sim-tool. Again, I'll share all these at the end of the webinar. This is a website that the World Bank built for Romania, and it is a simulation tool that allows anybody to simulate the impact of fiscal policy reform. So this indicator not only allows to compare the aggregate impact of fiscal policy across countries, across time, it also allows to compare the impact of individual fiscal policy reforms on inequality. And I'll just play with that a little bit to show you the power of this. So here you're in the tab policy choices, you have all options of policy reforms. So you see direct taxes, direct transfers, social security contribution, etc., etc. And the values that are here are the current policies of the Romanian government. So you can see that right now the personal income tax rate in Romania is 16, for instance. Excuse me. So I want to make a fiscal reform, and I'm going to increase the personal income tax rate from 16 to 30%. And on the other hand, I'm going to decrease the VAT rate from 20 to 10%. So I increase direct taxes, but decrease indirect taxes. And now, so you can run a simulation, and here you go. You can then check the impact of your fiscal reform. Here it's first, I look at the impact on the fiscal balance. I'm sorry, this thing of Zoom is in the way. Here you go. So the blue lines are the baseline, so the current policy of the Romanian government, and the orange is the simulation, so my fiscal reform. You can see that revenues slightly increase with my reform. So in other words, the new money that I get from increasing the personal income tax is more than what I lose from decreasing the VAT. Expenditure don't change. I haven't changed anything about education or health spending or social protection. And the impact is a pretty big reduction in the budget deficit for the government. But now I'm particularly interested in impact on inequality. And here we see the curve for the different income concepts that I've explained. So we start with a market income inequality of 37, Gini of 37. And then we see that with my fiscal reform, inequality decrease. The orange is below the blue. And that is because I have increased a progressive tax, which is the personal income tax, and I have decreased a regressive tax, which is the value added tax. So positive impact on inequality. And I could predict that, but here we see the actual scale of it. And of course, if I had chosen different parameters, if I had changed the tax rates even more, we could see an even bigger impact here. And here is the impact on poverty, where again we see that disposable income, as far as disposable income is concerned, poverty increases. And that is because the poor people do pay some personal income tax, even though not much. And for disposable income, it only takes into account direct taxes and transfers. But when we move to consumable income, there we see that poverty decreases. So this includes both the effect of the personal income tax increase and the value added tax decrease. The net impact of that is a reduction of poverty. And again, you can play with the parameters and you could find, for instance, at what rate that there is a neutral effect on poverty. A last graph I'm going to show here is this one. This shows the distribution of the net impact of the fiscal system throughout the income distribution. So we can see for the poorest decile, so the poorest 10% of the population, both the blue and orange bar are positive. That means that the poorest people are net beneficiaries of the fiscal system. But after my fiscal reform, the poor people are even more beneficiaries. The orange bar is higher. The second decile, they are net payer into the fiscal system, and my reform doesn't really make any change. And for all the other deciles, the richer people, they are all net payers, and it's a progressive progressive fiscal system. You can see that the richer the people, the bigger, the more they are net payer into the system. And my fiscal reform accentuates that even more. So this is, I think, the holy grail for fiscal justice advocates. As I said, this tool is at this time available online only for Romania, but the World Bank has some kind of version of this for about 20 countries. Most of the time, it's not in as user-friendly as this, and it's not published. But having a tool like this for fiscal justice advocates is within reach, and it would allow you to really adjust your advocacy agenda, your policy objectives, to really understand what your policy proposal, what impact they would have on budget deficit, on inequality, on poverty. So in my opinion, it would be a great, valuable tool for fiscal justice advocates and a good basis for having a national dialogue on fiscal policy. It's a tool that's within reach, but you'll have to do some work to get that, and that's what we are going to discuss in our panel after my presentation. But a last thing before I end is a last website is this one, is the inequalityindex.org. This is a collaboration between Oxfam and Development Finance International. We have worked together to produce what is called a commitment to reducing inequality index. And that index uses the redistributive impact of fiscal policy indicator together with many other data points and indicators. And all together, they form this index that measures the degree to which governments fight inequality. And again, you can compare your government to neighboring governments, how hard they work to fight inequality. It measures three policy areas, tax, social spending, and labor policies. And it measures both the soundness of policies, the quality of implementation, and policy outcomes. All that into this commitment to reducing inequality index. There are tons of data points which you can all download from the website, but I let you that on your own. And so with that, my presentation ends. Again, you can ask any questions in the Q&A, but we'll respond to them after we move to the panel in a second. So let me start with the first panel. And we are going to discuss both technical challenges and policy opportunities of this tool. So Sailesh, Setyo, Binish, Richmond, thank you very much for talking to us today. And I'll start with you, Sailesh. Could you tell us why is the World Bank investing in this tool and how you have used it to shape fiscal and social protection policies?
Brilliant. Thanks very much.
And I'm sorry, I have to stop sharing my screen first.
Sure.
So yeah, okay, go ahead. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, you can hear me fine, right?
Yes.
Okay. No, thanks very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to join you this afternoon and talk about these topics. We've of course partnered with Oxfam on the sponsoring of this SDG indicator 10.4.2, and this is an incredible opportunity to disseminate more information about what this indicator is, where it comes from, and how we can all, as parts of this ecosystem on fiscal policies and equity, support countries make better policies to reduce inequalities. For the World Bank, I mean, the interest, to answer your question, the interest really comes from our primary objective, which is helping countries design policies to reduce poverty, eliminate poverty. And inequality, as we know, is one of the major wedges between the translation of overall economic growth and the progress that we see at the bottom parts of the distribution. So inequality is a real sort of impediment to poverty reduction, if you will. And fiscal policies is one of the most potent instruments to address inequality, as it came out in the video that you showed in the presentation you made just now. I mean, for example, if you think about where do inequalities come from, thinking about inequality of opportunities that start from early childhood, from the time people are born, the circumstances they're born into determining their life chances entirely. How much governments spend on things like education and health, how well they spend on these things, particularly from the perspective of how they benefit those in the bottom parts of the distribution, matter quite a great deal for inequality and the success governments have on reducing inequality, making sure that all children start their lives on equal footing. Once these children become adults, enter the market, as you were saying, governments can use instruments of fiscal policy, for example, tax policy instruments, to take a little bit from those who can and perhaps should pay into the system to redistribute a little bit to those who may need it through a variety of instruments. So this type of redistribution can also be used to address inequalities that arise in the market, for example. And then there are the shocks that families experience routinely throughout their lifetimes, right? These are economic shocks, health shocks, shocks related to natural disasters, etc. And how well the governments are prepared to protect families. Often it's the poorer parts of the income distribution who are more vulnerable to these shocks, who have no other recourse other than to really do things like, liquidate assets, productive assets, pull kids out of school. So really bear the consequences. How well do governments have instruments, fiscal policy instruments in place to protect, put a floor on living standards in the case of shocks, etc. So a variety of sort of entry points for fiscal policy instruments to affect inequality. And of course, I mean, there are various ways one could look at how well fiscal policy is doing. And, the literature, the economics literature on welfare economics, public economics, has always had tools to analyze individual fiscal policy instruments. For example, take education. Benefit incidence analysis of education has been around for a long time. You could apply the same tools for health. You could apply the same tools for social protection, food assistance, and you could apply the same tools for the tax side. But CEQ is perhaps, I mean, one of the most desirable aspects of this tool is that it brings everything together in a nice, coherent framework and gets us to that distillation of that overall impact on aggregate sort of impact on inequality and poverty. And one of the reasons why it has become the main workhorse and indeed the main instrument that motivates the SDG indicator, right? So that's one of the reasons we've invested quite a bit in scaling CEQ method and its application in countries. This type of analysis, looking at the equity impacts of fiscal policy, is now a core part of our fiscal policy diagnostic in every country. So the World Bank, every 3 or 4 years in every country, does what's called the public expenditure review, which is now a public finance review, meaning we're looking not just at the expenditure side, but also the revenue side. And among many other things that are analyzed in this diagnostic product, we want to encourage teams and countries to keep an eye, to maintain an eye on the equity side as well. And CEQ really has been the primary sort of workhorse, as I mentioned, right? And in terms of like how we are using it, I mean, we are using it in a variety of ways, but the Poland example, Didier, that you showed is really the frontier of it all, in the sense that, for countries where we start asking these questions, we start assembling the data to begin to develop that baseline understanding of, okay, what is the current state of the amount of redistribution in aggregate fiscal policy achieves in this country. That's somewhat of a backward-looking analysis. But what you described there is then, using this framework to work with policymakers, to work with other stakeholders in countries to think about, okay, how do we go from here to another place, right? What policies do we change? And can we look at the trade-offs together? The example you showed of, VAT reduction, personal income tax reduction, that's one way of looking at it. Again, the real beauty also comes in being able to sort of marry the tax and spending side. And there are very difficult trade-offs governments often face. Questions of subsidies, for example, fossil fuel subsidies comes up quite a bit in many countries. Not efficient, takes away resources from other public use. Not equitable in the sense that most of the richer segments of the society benefit from these subsidies, and also not environmentally friendly. But for the poor in many countries, those at the aspiring middle class or those in the vulnerable categories, fossil fuel subsidies are still a lifeline. There's still a way to connect to government. So, how do we tackle reforms in areas that are as difficult as this? Perhaps, CEQ analysis, the type of analysis that you showed, for example, for Poland, counterfactual assessments of, okay, if we reduce subsidies a little bit here, but then thought about scaling up cash transfers in this manner so that we protect the poor, is there a win-win that we could achieve, right? So that's the kind of analysis that in countries where we have the data, we have the tools, we've had partners to work with. The teams are working on topics such as these. But I've spoken quite a bit. I'll pause here.
Thank you. And so now, how does it look like from a country perspective? And Setio, I'm going to ask the same question to you. Why has the Indonesian government invested in these tools, and how are you using it?
Thank you, Aditya Jacob, for the question. I think it's quite clear also that it's already explained actually some of them, most of them with Shailesh related to the usefulness of these tools. And I think in Indonesia, actually, we already have this analysis in 5 years, and I think it shows that actually, and this is quite strategic because then it explains related to the granularity actually, because through these tools actually we can understand about the programs, the policy, the intervention that we already have in Indonesia, and how is the impact. And I think as we know that poverty and inequality, of course, that is the heart of the development. So I think that is why this tool is very important to see how effective related to many interventions that government have. And like what already said by Shailesh, that related to the like a direct transfer, and also related to the fuel subsidy, electricity subsidy, and what is the impact of the health and also on education, and related to some of the things that we also see related to the tobacco excise, and also VAT, value added tax, and also personal income tax. So we see that it's quite broader, quite broad, related to the aspect that have impact to the inequality, and also of course in poverty also. And what is rather different in Indonesia, as we don't have the data related to income. We have much more in expenditure. So we have some adjustment related to the GEV and its CEV tool. And through the CEV tool, actually, we then know related to what is the programs, what is the intervention that effective. Some of them we see which one actually have better targeted, and also what is the social assistance program that needs to be much more generous, and we know which one that is the target of the intervention already appropriate or not to the quintile of the household. So that is very important, very useful, and that is why we understand related to why the intervention related to the conditional cash transfer, why we increase very much, because we understand through this tool that that is really have big impact to related to poverty, and of course in inequality also. And we see that it's quite impactful, and we see that through this tool we understand that this program actually really useful for the lowest quintile. And then also we understand also related to the energy subsidy that many of them are regressive. So we quite understand to that, and also related to analysis of what should be done by the government related to the targeting, and also what is the programs that are quite effective, and also related to the size of the expenditure that we should have, and also the recommendation of the tax or revenue that we have to make much more greater impact. And also what is also interesting to this tool actually about the comparability. So we understand about the impact in Indonesia, let's say. But of course, through this tool, we have the same approach, and then we can see actually what is the difference, what is the effectiveness of these tools if we compare with other countries, and through that, so we can learn actually. So it needs this tool is very important But then through this tool, we should have shared experiences among the countries. And let's say that if we see that actually Indonesia should learn a lot from other countries, that probably typically almost the same with Indonesia, but through the tools, we understand that other countries is much more effective, and then we can learn from the or even from other country can also learn from Indonesia. I think that is the useful of this the tools, especially of course in designing policy, because we understand, and later on also related to how we learn from each other to make our fiscal policy much more effective in addressing inequality and also poverty. That's all, Didier. Thank you. You are still muted, Didier.
Thank you for reminding me that. Thank you for your words, Sitio. Let me now turn to Richmond. Richmond, you've recently completed a study for Ghana, and I'd like you to tell us a little bit more what it took to compute this indicator, like very concretely, what did you have to do? And also give us an idea of what resources were needed, like how many people, for how long time does it take, so that our audience who are not familiar with this have a better idea of what it takes to compute this.
Okay, great. Thank you, Didier, and thank you, everyone. I'm very happy to be part of this panel. So as you rightly said, we just completed, I think it's almost about a year ago since we completed our study, trying to do a second CQ analysis for Ghana. The first one was done a couple of years ago using GLSS 6, or what we call the Ghana Living Standards Survey 6. And then after that, we had another round of data, nationwide representative household data, the GLSS 7. So we decided to conduct another CQ analysis to see what we are or where we are with regards to the impacts of fiscal policies and social spending on inequality and poverty as well. So basically, in doing CQ analysis, you need a nationwide, nationally representative data, household data, so that with that, you'll be able to assign or allocate the various fiscal revenue measures, spending measures to households. And then you could now analyze at each level of the income concept, as Didier explained. Then you could analyze to see what the effects are with regards to a particular tax policy or spending policy. So one of the things that you want to be very sure about is whether the data you have from, let's say, the national representative, the household survey, gives you reflects what is actually on the ground. So you also want to have some administrative data and make some sort of reconciliation and see how the numbers compare between the administrative data and then the household survey data. So that you have to do, otherwise you can't be sure. You may be dealing with a certain percentage of government revenues from the household survey, which might be totally different from what the government people are saying. Then there are other things that other areas where you also need the administrative data to complement household data. So because the household data may not have collected comprehensive information on certain things you will need. And so you will need the administrative data to know, to complement the household data. For example, if government says it's spending a certain amount of money on help for education, the provision of help for education. In the household data, you may not be able to get a full sense of how much that expenditure may be. Of course, people may be going to the hospitals and maybe benefiting from the expenditure that government is incurring over there. But from the household perspective, you may not be able to get what the actual expenditure may be. So then you would need an administrative data on how much government has spent, and then you could now allocate it to household that benefits from that provision of service. Yeah, so you have to do that. And then you would also need to have a sense about how, especially if you're thinking about indirect taxes, how indirect taxes are borne by various households and what rates are they being borne, because we have what we call the effective rates vis-a-vis the normal rates that you know, the standard rate that you know. So if you are buying something and there is an indirect tax on it, maybe it's 15% indirect tax on it, what you may actually be paying may be more than that, because other items that go into the production of this service or product may have indirect taxes on it. So you have to use the other data you need to use is what called the social accounting matrix. And from the social accounting matrix, you'll be able to compute the effective tax rate for the various items that the house will consume, and then you can now compute. Yeah, in terms of resources, when we're doing it, the tool was completely new to us, so we had to go through some learning curve. So we had the support of Prof. Steve Younger, who used to be at the Tulane University, to help us navigate the tool. And so that took some time. So we were effectively 3 people working on it, and it took us about 1 year or so to produce the results and then also put together the report. If we were to do it all over again with the capacity that we have developed, maybe it would take much shorter time. Maybe we might only need about something in the region of about 6 months with 3 people working on it to produce the results and generate the report. And generate the report. I should say that what sometimes draws back the work in terms of how fast you can complete is the data. When you need administrative data, and in our context, getting administrative data sometimes is not that easy and straightforward. You will have to use both formal and informal channels to be able to get the data. Yeah, I think I've spoken a lot. Didier, unless there's some specific thing you want me to address.
That was very helpful. Thank you. Yeah, so it gives us an idea. It's definitely feasible in every country where there is a household survey, but it does take a lot of work the first time, and so that's also speak to the regularity of it. It really decreases the costs. So that's dovetails to you, Benish. So the CQ Institute used to do all of that, but now there are more actors involved. And so how do you see the role of the Institute to continue disseminating, promoting this tool in the future?
Thank you, Didier. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. First of all, thank you for the invite and organizing this very useful webinar. Actually, mainstreaming the use of CEQ tool through advisory service and training has always been part of the CEQ Institute's mission. In this regard, from the very beginning, when we started working on the Latin American countries, CEQ, we worked with the local researchers and academia members to help us conduct the CEQ assessment and complete the CEQ assessments. So these very first CEQs, the role of the local researchers to complete it was key. So CEQ affiliated researchers and CEQ academia members list is long and it's across the globe. And you can see from the web page you have shared earlier of the CEQ Institute. I believe one of the key reasons of continued engagement with the local researchers for the tool, besides the capacity enhancement, remained the understanding of the economy and the fiscal system. As my other friends are mentioning, their experience for Indonesia and for Ghana, you can understand that it requires a deeper understanding of the country context. It requires a it needs us to navigate the complex questions pertaining to the fiscal and social policy of the country. It's a very data-intense process. So with the local knowledge, be it through the local researchers or through the government officials, it's always helpful to complete the fiscal incidence analysis as accurately as possible. CEQ Institute has played key role in actually mainstreaming the dissemination of the tool, particularly with the multilateral organizations such as IMF, World Bank, Inter-American Development Bank. We also work with ADB, African Development Bank, OECD, European Commission, etc. We worked extensively earlier with the IMF for the fiscal consolidation program using our tool. We also continue to provide the training and advisory services and working very closely with the World Bank from 2013 onwards. In fact, one of such trainings was conducted during the World Bank IMF spring meetings, and the officials from the Ministry of Finance Indonesia were there. And after the training, they approached the World Bank and then they asked that how can they learn and understand the tool. So that was the beginning of this demand-driven process to understand the tool and then the dissemination of the tool and to implement the tool using the CEQ analysis. So it's very interesting that they were the first ones who asked to be trained on how to use the tool. Our role in future is going to be the same as was the past, which includes training and advisory services. We are doing some exercises with the local researchers, which are basically spearheaded by the CEQ Institute to conduct the new CEQ assessments. We are also working with the World Bank on the frontier methodological topics, some of which are like gender, on top income. We are also working with the other researchers on the topics of infrastructure, top incomes, in-kind transfers, how to treat the pensions. So we believe that the wider dissemination of the tool and its implementation is possible through the capacity building and capacity enhancement of and building the local knowledge, basically. So engaging the local researcher and then building the capacity of the government officials is key because they understand the country context completely, and then it helps us a lot to understand the fiscal system, the social policy, and get us all the relevant data which we need, not only the household survey data or the micro data, but also the macro fiscal data and the national account understanding and understanding of the fiscal interventions. So this is key to get the fiscal incidence analysis as accurately as possible. It also actually helps in increasing the project's broader impact on society. So we aim to continue providing these advisory services and training services and building the local knowledge and helping the government officials and the multilateral organizations in firstly dissemination of this tool and also in improving this tool with the methodological frontier topics. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so, yeah, I heard that this tool is already very powerful, but it could become even more powerful, like allowing people to really analyze the impact of fiscal policies in by gender, by race, by any social demographic group, by region also. So that's really very exciting. With that said, there are also some limitations to the tool, and maybe Richmond, can you say a few words about that? What people should keep in mind when they are seeing this data?
Yeah, thank you again, Didier. So there are some limitations. I should say that the CEQ, as far as I know it, is one of the very comprehensive tools for doing fiscal policy analysis because of the many tax and spending measures analysis. So in that sense, but limitations of the analysis. And one of it, I think, is that the CEQ doesn't really cover all government revenues and expenditure. You're not able to capture everything in it, most especially the expenditure side of fiscal policy or social spending measures. So, for example, infrastructure, you're not able to capture it. When they're spending on defense, you're not able to capture it. And other public goods, something like corporate taxes or income taxes, you're not able to capture it because the thing works in a way that you should be able to allocate or assign this spending or revenue measures to individuals and households. So if you're not able to, if there's no mechanism by which you can do that sort of assignment, then you won't be able to cover that particular spending or tax policy item. So I remember in Ghana's case, for example, the analysis that we did, we were able to, in terms of revenue, we were able to really capture much more of it. I think we were able to capture about 68% of the revenue side. But when it comes to the expenditure side, we were only able to capture about 19% of the expenditure side of government fiscal policy measures. The other thing is that it's a static analysis, so it provides a point in time sort of analysis of the fiscal effects of the measures. So it doesn't really provide a general equilibrium framework sort of resource where you can measure trade-offs very effectively, trade-offs between different policy options very effectively. So that is a problem there or a limitation. So for example, because it's static and it's not dynamic, you can't really determine that if government invested in some infrastructure versus giving transfer to household, what the effect would be in the long term or in the near future. You're not able to tell, but what you can learn is that at the moment, if that policy measure or framework takes place, what will be the effect? Yeah, so that is one issue that you will have to be having in mind when you're interpreting the results. The other thing is that in-kind benefits from free government services in education and health usually valued at the average cost of the provision. So it ignores quality dimensions. It doesn't really capture the quality of the provision of these services that you are providing to government. But you agree with me that if quality also matters, if a segment of the population is getting very high level quality service provision and the last segment is not getting that in itself is also problematic. And then the fact that the results may say that a particular tax policy measure, for example, is regressive or progressive, in itself doesn't really mean that it is desirable. So that's to say that this doesn't really take into account the socio-cultural and political context of the country. And so in interpreting the results and providing policy guidance or doing policy advocacy based on the results, you need to also consider so many other things beyond what you will learn from the CEQ analysis. Yeah, so these are the main, 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 the limitations that we know of on the CQ. But I know that the CQ Institute is working to improve several dimensions on it. And I think the Deputy Executive Director has spoken about some of the things that they are trying to do with regards to the expenditure side so that we can capture a lot more of the government expenditures in the analysis, maybe in the near future. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And indeed, the CQ Institute is working on some of these limitations to make the tool even more powerful. In the interest of time, I'm just going to seamlessly move us to the second panel, but we can really be a group discussion for everybody. And in the second panel, what we want to convey to our audience is what does it take in terms of collaboration to make this happen? So we have a variety of actors on this panel, of course, academics, and then government, and then the World Bank and national civil society organization. And I'd like to turn to media. If you could tell us, describe us a little bit the activities that you've been doing this past year to try to pull these actors together, and then Setio, if you could comment also on that afterwards, how you see the government working with other actors to really generate this national debate about inequality in the country, and AHA again, so that the three Indonesian, you can basically address the same question, which is generally how can we really use this tool going beyond the technicalities of it, but generate a national debate about inequality. Media, can you start?
Yeah, thank you, Didier. Thank you for the question. For Indonesia, the World Bank of Indonesia has been cooperating with Fiscal Policy Unit since 2014. I think Pak Budi can also add this information as well. And since last year, Oxfam in Indonesia have organized a series of meetings and workshops to explore the challenges and opportunities around the CQ tools. But I would like to highlight Saleh's point that during the meeting, we understand how crucial and CQ tool has the potential not only to measure the impact of fiscal policy on inequality, but also can estimate the impact of each fiscal policy choice on the whole population or specific groups. We can even develop the ex-ante analysis. So I think Pak Budi already mentioned that the government used the CQ tools to estimate the impact of shifting government budgets from energy subsidies to cash transfers. So employing these tools prior to the policy implementation, we can predict what percentage of the poor population can be covered and what the impact of policies will be. So I think this is a very crucial and also lesson learned for all of us and also for everyone around the world of how important CQ tool is. But there is a strong message once again from the relevant stakeholders during our meeting. We recognize that we should expand the analysis. So maybe we can use the CQ tools working towards gender equality, to address regional inequalities. We have a big issue on that in Indonesia. We can also use that to tackle discrimination, and also we can use that to analyze the impact of fiscal policy on several groups of people like women, elderly communities, and young generation. So this is also something that come up during our engagement with relevant stakeholders. And another thing that I would like to highlight, Didier, I think this is a kind message to Saleh and also the World Bank. During our engagement with the relevant stakeholders, we recognize that CQ tools is a very complicated tool and it requires people with specialized knowledge in economics and statistical modeling. So when the expert, for example, move to different units, so there may be a loss of this knowledge and making it very challenging to produce another CEQ publication. And And another issue is the fact that in the case of Indonesia, we have Susenas data, household data set, and then we recognize during our engagement that we can only see around 50% of the impact of various government policy programs using that data. So we need to have more and more experts, more researchers to work on that and utilize the national statistical data. And one more thing, Didier, the quality and lack of data still significant issues. Many CSOs emphasize that it looks like the current level of inequality in the country, for example, is actually far higher than the official statistics or the CEQ estimation reported by the government. And we recognize that one of the issue is the data may not be able to capture the top 1% income because of underreporting of top income. So this is something that we've got to work better. And then I think the World Bank, the academics, and local researcher can take the lead and step up to address this. So I think overall we agree that CSOs and also local government as well should participate in policy dialogue, advocacy, and strengthening the work on CQ tools. Didier, over.
Good. Well, over to Setio, if you could
Yeah,
give
yeah.
your perspective on the same question, Setio.
Add that, yeah. Yeah.
Before beyond the, I think what
Oh, we don't hear you very well. You're not muted, but it's just very. Maybe you need to speak a bit louder.
Yeah.
can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Before I'll go to beyond the technicalities, I think what Benny said, I think is very important, related to the local specific or the national specific. Of course, we should understand related to the specific issues, and also what is the challenges that we have, and also what already happened with the development and everything. I think that is very important to see the characteristic of the challenge that we have. And then the second one, I think it's also what media also said, related to the data. Actually, if we want to have a greater impact, I mean, related to the disaggregation of the data, let's say for the gender, for the income groups, or age groups, and also for the disability. I think we need much more data that also accommodate that. So it means that if we have much more rich data, so it means that the analysis will be much more sharper to design the policy or the fiscal policy, budget policy, the priority, so to have much more impact. And I think from my understanding, that we learn SDGs, and then we already also since 2017. So we have many innovative questionnaire, much more deeper, related to how we fulfill the indicators of SDGs, and also how we try to fulfill the spirit of no one left behind. It means that the disaggregation is very important, and that is why, like in 2017, so we have the data related to the workers. Of course, we have the data for the workers, formal workers and informal workers, but also related to the disability, also even also for the poverty. So it means that that is very important to have the rich data to have this GEQ much more powerful. And then the second one, much more in technicalities. I think we also really committed related to the inclusivity of the process. In Indonesia, the process of the related to how we adopt the indicator of SDGs. Of course, we need to include all of the stakeholders that related to that. It means that, of course, what already Oxfam did, especially invite many stakeholders and also us also to also involved to that process. I think we really appreciate to that. And also we must much more. I mean, of course, the World Bank as the custodian agency of this indicator, I think is very important. And the custodian agency, I mean, for the ministry in Indonesia, of course, the Ministry of Finance, and also under the Ministry of Finance, we have the Fiscal Policy Agency. So that is also very important. And that is why all of the process that we have to have the inclusion process. So after we have a discussion very inclusively with these related stakeholders, and then what we already did previously. Actually, we already did all of these things, but now related to how we officially adopt the indicators of 10.4.2, and that is the next step that we have, and of course we need to discuss more. I mean, in all of the Indonesian indicators, SDG indicator 289, we have all of the metadata. So we need to design all of the metadata. We should agree related to the metadata, all of the stakeholders. And then after that, if we already agree, then the process that officially the indicators officially adopted by Indonesia, that it means if we officially adopted, it means that until 2030, and then it already secure, the data and everything should be secure, including related to the how we finance related to the study and everything. So that is the process that we will take, Didier. So to collaborate each other, the process of inclusiveness, and then after that we secure that until 2030 we will have the data and everything will be each year or each 2 years we will have it, something like that. Thank you.
Thank you. And so same question to you, Aha, about so how do you think this tool can be used to collaborate with the government, other CSOs, to have this national debate on inequality? Oh, you are muted.
Okay, thank you, Didier. Hello, all panelists. First of all, thank you for having me today. It is it's good topic. It's very important topic. How to advancing equity through fiscal policy. Let me start from a negative point of view. In the reality, even though some government already have the report on fiscal policy analysis, use CEQ tools, the impact on poverty alleviation and inequality reduction is still far from the target in each countries. The meaning of the reality is the result, the report of fiscal policy analysis not used strongly to reform the tax policy, both in the revenue side and in the spending side. Even though any policy improvement in some countries, but the effectiveness of programs of policies intervention, it's still far. So we not only facing the challenges inside of tax policy, but also in the fiscal in general. So, for example, in Indonesia, in 2021 during pandemic, the government of Indonesia tried to reform their fiscal policy to boost the domestic resource mobilization. In the law number 721, the harmonization of taxation rule, the government of Indonesia increased tax bracket for personal income tax until 35% from 30%. It's quite promising, but in other hand, the tax rate for corporates decreased to 22% from 25%. It's what we call contradictory policies, in my point of view. So in other policy, for example, the government of Indonesia also introduced carbon tax, was also decided in the law number 7, but the implementation was postponed. Yeah, I don't know the reason why the government postponed the implementation of carbon tax. Speculative point of view, still thinking about the intervention of the giant company or others wealthies and so on and so on. So I will continue with the point of view from the CSO perspective to have a bridge to answer your question, Didier. As tax justice campaigner and tax justice advocate, I'm still far from the deepening of the CEQ tools, to be honest. And my network, the Global Lion for Tax Justice, also still far from the deepening CEQ tools. So I think the CEQ tool still not yet used by the major group at the global level of the tax justice campaigner. So it is the challenge that we facing. Some challenges still, in my point of view, the CEQ tool still too technical rather than policy domain. So the civil society organization, the tax justice campaigner, a bit not have enough confidence to having deepening on this tool. The second challenge is about the approach. As Pak Budi mentioned before, the inclusiveness is important, but the translating CEQ tool into domestic works, it's too exclusive in my perspective. So we need to making sure that the discussion about the research report, the design analysis is more inclusive. And the last but not the least on the challenges is about the data openness. As we in the Prakarsa did research on illicit financial flows calculation, for example,
the government, the tax authorities still put some data in the requirement that not allow to other institution to access, etc., and so on. So it's difficult for civil society organization to have sufficient data. Sometimes we buy data from UN Comtrade, from others big company, and it's costly to have sufficient resource to make a calculation, to make a measurement, the magnitude of illicit financial flows, for example, in some commodities, export commodities from Indonesia to other country, for example. So the last one is about my proposal. The CEQ tools need to be brought to the public domains. The meaning is the result of fiscal policy analysis need to be translated into a common language and understood by the taxpayer. If not, we will lose the importance of the tools. On the other hand, we need to invite more non-state actors, which is CSOs or academia, to be more involved in the fiscal policy analysis through, for example, joint analysis, joint research, training, etc. And the last one is about we need to find the way on how to strengthen utility of the report of the fiscal policy analysis through the CEQ tool as a weapon, yeah, to policy tailoring. That's all from my point of view. Back to you, Didier. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Aha. And I feel bad that I didn't manage the time better, because you've just thrown a lot of different thoughts that are really worthy of responses. Just to remind everybody about the time. So we had planned to finish the panels at this time and then have a 15 minutes of Q&A. I see only three questions in the Q&A. Do feel free to ask questions at this time. But we are going to take a few more minutes for this panel, so there will be a shorter Q&A session, but still, I think we have time for more than the three questions that are already asked. And I like to have that discussion between the three different perspectives from Indonesia. We also want to have a few words from Angela from the Ghana situation. But yes, I see. Sailesh, do you wanted to respond to Aha?
We can go with the flow, Didier. Whenever you come around, I'll respond then.
No, so I think he made several points that are worthy of response. So Sailesh, Setio, if you just be very brief, but if you want to react to some of what Aha says, please go ahead.
No, I thought really excellent points. I really thought it's something that we certainly are aspiring to do. And I wanted to link one of the questions that's out there in the chat box on the Romania question, which relates to no progressive tax in Romania simulation possible with higher rates of income tax, higher incomes, right? So, that's the point on inclusivity is precisely that. I mean, what you probably showed at that time of the microsimulation tool that was presented was one version, but what our aspiration is in the countries that we work on is to actually design these things in consultations directly with the stakeholders. So I think to the extent that those are relevant parameters to program into those tools, we would like to, right? So that's one. The other is on the complexity, and I mean it's a it's an extremely valid point. And then, we are really at the bank, together with the CEQ Institute, when we think about methodology, the thinking that goes into the interface that you saw, for example, those are efforts on our side to essentially, simplify the interface, at least with a lot of the mechanical aspects. Can we put it in a black box, hide it somewhere, but start to have real tangible conversations about policy, right? So that's an effort. Now we're talking in Indonesia, which actually is at the forefront in terms of the types of data you have. Of course, there's more that could be had, and I think Binish may comment on this, but no one tool can certainly address all questions related to inequality. There will be many complementary approaches, but I do think this is a useful conversation starter. Indonesia, at least in my experience, from the gamut of the range of countries that we are working in, Indonesia, with the annual SUS analysis and with several rounds of CEQ analyses that have been done, I think what the conversation we're having is a very positive one, in the sense that, how do we keep making this instrument better? There's another set of data challenge entirely related to the blank cells that you showed, Didier, in that Excel file that you brought up, right? There, it's much more basic. Can we get a household survey to even begin to have these conversations, and then Indonesia being at the other frontier? But that's all from me at this point.
Thank you. And I think Binish, you raise your hands as well.
Yes, thank you, Sailesh, and thank you. I agree with you that Indonesia is literally at the forefront. They have the advanced data, so much so that we are piloting our infrastructure incidents, because, as you know, the CEQ analysis has this one limitation, that it could not understand the impact of the public investment in infrastructure on equity. So we are piloting using the subnational data from the Indonesia for this methodology to understand the impact of the infrastructure spending on poverty and inequality. And we are fairly in advanced stages of the implementation. We can totally understand the complexity of it, and that is the reason that we work very closely with the World Bank to make the studies we have conducted thus far available publicly, which Didier has showed at the beginning of his presentation, to the people. They can go. There are several ways in which we are showing it, where for the countries where we don't have the data limitations or the restrictions to not to make it public, we make all the do files, the codes, the model, the results public. We also have this sheet, which is a summary indicator called the standard indicators for all the countries. We have conducted the analysis so far, and this is basically a bridge or summarized version of the key indicators being produced. As far as understanding of the civil society and training is concerned, so we are also working with the bank to prepare these modules to make it publicly available, so that people can understand the complexity of it and what does it entail. We have recently had the forum with the UNDP. They have this initiative of tax inspectors without borders. And then both the World Bank and the CEQ team was present there, and we presented our solutions, the overall results we are getting, how we can improve it. So as we're saying, the complexity remains, and we are trying our level best to make it more useful to the users and make it more understandable to them. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much. So I'm sorry again that interest of time we have to move on, but Aha really raised, or unless Setio, do you want to weigh in also in a few briefly? Yes, if you speak a bit louder.
So I think, yes, okay. So I think what is quite interesting what Sally said also, that actually when I was in Oxford at the time, what I understand that the richness of data in Indonesia is related to the statistical bureau is quite extensive. They see that, and that is we can see that from our VNR, the voluntary national report is about 800 pages, and you can see how the richness of the data in Indonesia related to the all of the goals of the SDGs and also on the indicators. And related to that, I think what is also very important, because, and this is very, very powerful actually, the tool. And what Aha said, I think the homework is related to how the communication, how we make the strategy communication to make this is understood by let's say common people. That is, I think, that is the homework of the communication. And then the second one, I think, what is also to be much more deeper, we should understand. We should also pursue. I think, and this is for Tulane University. We also expect that this one, not only in national level, but also in much more in sub-national level. If that is possible, I think it will be much more useful. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So again, we'll have only a few minutes for the Q&A after, but feel free to still ask questions. We still have some time. But I did want to turn to Ghana, and it was useful to have different perspective on Indonesia, but I wanted to highlight that this is only one model. In Indonesia, the CEQ tools were really driven by the World Bank and the government. And now Angela is going to explain us that it can also happen in different ways. So over to you, Angela. Explain us how the study that Richmond did came about, and what Oxfam is doing to disseminate it. And I have first to apologize that you don't have a lot of time, less than foreseen. So thank you for being brief.
Right. Thank you very much, Didier. Thank you, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So just as Didier started, unlike in Indonesia, in Ghana, we currently have about 2 data points. So the very first one was actually an initiative of the CEQ Institute, and then it was the research was done by a consultant using the GLSS. So Ghana, I think Didier had already alluded to the fact that data can sometimes be an issue. So Ghana has a Ghana Living Standards survey that is done about every 5 years or so. So the very first data points for Ghana was done using the 2012 edition of the GLSS. And then the second one, which was done by Dr. Richmond and his colleagues, was done using the 2017 should I say, round of the study of the GLSS data. And even with that, they still had to collect some administrative data in addition. I think Dr. Richmond spoke about it. Currently, the Ghana Statistical Service, that's the National Statistical Agency, is working on collecting data for an 8th round. And then, so that could possibly become like the data source for another round of the study. So in terms of what Oxfam has been doing, so we've had funding from a GIZ project, and we've undertaken a number of activities. So for example, there has been some training for CSOs as well as academia on the use of the tool. And then furthermore, we supported Dr. Richmond and his colleagues to print another abridged version of their study, basically a policy brief that would make for easier reading. We went further to engage policymakers in a brief lunch and then a policy dialogue. So we had, should I say, participants from the Ghana Statistical Service, from the Ministry of Finance, some development partners, as well as from academia, just to share thoughts on what could happen next, and then how best to use the tool. And apart from that, we also recently had the opportunity to disseminate the results of the study further at the recently ended Pan-African Conference on illicit financial flows and taxation. It was held in Accra, and then we had the opportunity through the collaboration with the Tax Justice Coalition of Ghana to organize a side session where the study was presented, and the feedback was generally very good. Interestingly, they raised some points that some of my colleagues from Indonesia have mentioned already about, for instance, doing some gendered analysis, even using the tool, as well as doing some spatial analysis, so looking at regional inequalities and others. So in terms of going forward, right, already within the study, they were able to do some analysis of some government policies. So for instance, the free SHS, which was a government policy that was organized, that was a policy that the government introduced to provide free senior high school education for all students at the senior high school level, as well as some electricity subsidies that were provided during COVID. And then they were able to use the CEQ tool to simulate those. So we are looking forward to this becoming something that is not just a one-off, but perhaps like something that can be done more frequently, so that even before a government policy is introduced, that it can be simulated using the CEQ tool, so that you can already even see what the potential effects are before it's even introduced. And I was very happy to hear that Indonesia is already doing things like that. We're also hoping that through the fact that there were some, should I say, researchers and others from academia there, that more research will be done on the use of the tool, so that some more analysis can be done, not just what has been done so far. We're also engaging bilaterally with like the Ministry of Finance, with the World Bank, and then the Ghana Statistical Service to look at how this can go further. So Didier, I trust I have managed well with time.
You did wonderfully, and I'm really sorry again that I cut your time short, Angela. And so we are just on time, but we didn't get the Q&A. I do want to quickly answer there were really 3 questions in the Q&A. I think we can do that in a couple of minutes. So to honor the audience, that's what I'm going to do now before closing, so in a couple of minutes. First question was, so there's no progressive tax. Oh, it's not possible to simulate a progressive tax in the Romania tool. So with higher rates for higher income, Sailesh already addressed that partially. So yeah, the current personal income tax in Romania is a flat tax. That's why there was just one tax rate. It would be very easy to modify the simulation tool to allow for different tax rates. And that's the kind of thing that if there is a dialogue between civil society and the government, yeah, that is kind of a quick win there that would be possible to adapt the tool to allow for that. And from the same person, a similar question. Yeah, in the example I showed, 80% of the population is a net contributor to the fiscal system, which means that they will democratically reject it. Well, apparently not, because that's the current situation in Romania. But it's true. Maybe people don't really realize that they are net payer or net contributor. There is an asterisk there that, as you have heard, this only includes part of the social spending or of the total public spending, and the picture might be different if you including all of it. But indeed, the point is to have more transparency about fiscal reform, and then it's by income. But again, you could model it by geography or by other social demographic classes. And it might indeed prompt some people to realize what they don't realize now, but that's what democracy is about, and we need to have a debate based on data. That would be my quick answer. And then there was one answer that Benish has already answered partially in the chat. I just read it quickly for everybody. So it's a question from Rachel Noble. I would love to hear more about how the methodology for the tool can be adapted to better capture the gendered distribution and impacts of fiscal policy, and also differential impacts along the lines of race. We know that economic inequality exists between women and men at societal and household level, including because of women's unequal share of unpaid care and domestic work. how might unpaid care work be incorporated and used to inform, for example, increased investments in public services that are so vital for its redistribution? And then, Binisha, I let you quickly either read or just repeat your answer for everybody.
Sure, thank you. So this is a very key question, and we have been working on the methodological frontiers for the engendered CEQ. So I'll let Sailesh come in afterwards, but there are basically currently two methodologies. One is taking the CEQ results as is and then dividing the households, assuming the equal share into different typologies, on the basis of the household characteristics. So the typologies are the care and fiscal mainly, and then understanding the differences within the household. The second methodology has been developed by CEQ Institute with Professor Olivier Bargen, in which what we do is we adopt the model of the intra-household resource allocation to basically account for the men and the women net of tax earning and targeted benefits as a determinant of the allocation function. And we have implemented this methodology on South Africa, and the paper is out there and it is available on CEQ webpage. What we are currently doing is that we want to implement both the different methodologies on one data set to understand the similarities in the results and the key policy recommendations. And we've been working with the World Bank on that. So once this is ready, and we are in the process of completion of this, so this is one of the frontier topic to understand what the policymakers can get out of these two methodologies, and if there are like the mutual results which can be obtained, or the policy recommendations which can be given, irrespective of which methodology is being used. So this is the frontier topic on the engender. We are doing for the race work. We did some work which is already available on the CEQ webpage. I'll let Sailesh come in if you would want to on the engendered work being done by the World Bank.
No, you covered it fairly comprehensively, Binish. It's something that we are innovating on. The proof of concept has been completed, and then now we are slowly taking baby steps towards scaling to a larger number of countries.
Well, thank you, everybody. We are just 5 minutes over time, but I hope that's not causing any trouble to any of you. Thank you so much for our panelists, for your time and for your insights in contributing to this discussion. Thank you for the audience for listening to us. I hope that it was insightful for you. And we really hope that the global tax justice movement, fiscal justice movement, will continue to use this tool to improve advocacy, to improve understanding, mutual understanding from all social groups in society. I am going to post my email here for everyone if you want any further information. We are also going to send a recording, the recording of this webinar to all participants, and please forward to whoever relevant. With that, thank you and goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, and thank you, Didier.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Didier. Thank you, panelists. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.